Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's another edition of our weekly debate show. I'm joined by two fantastic guests who I'll introduce you to in a minute. Not that they need intros anymore. They've been on so often that I'm sure you know who they are. But on this week's edition, we're going to be discussing the world's most famous domestic cup competition, the FA Cup. Has it lost its magic? Why? Can it be saved? And how? That is the topic of this week's debate. Don't forget, this show is brought to you by tvsportsblog.com in association with JW Betting. Do head over there. There's some fantastic content for all sports fans. They touch on a wide variety of sports. Really good stuff. And a big shout out to John Wright and the rest of the team over there. Right. The FA Cup, has it lost its magic? I certainly think so. But before I give you my reasons, Dan DeLuca, your opinion on a competition that Spurs haven't won for quite a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that could be any competition. It could be any competition, that couldn't it? To be fair, you just specify which competition. You don't want a match for a long time, never mind a competition. So it's clearly lost its magic. It's not the competition it was, and it's a shame that the illusion of the magic seems to be gathering pace every single year to the point now where even the fans aren't turning up. There's the attitude where, like, you get knocked out and, you recover from it within about 5 minutes. There's a lot of reasons for that probably that we'll come on to in a minute. But, it's clear that just the fact we're having this debate and we're not the only people having this debate this week or in past seasons, the FA Cup is not the competition that it once was. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And Alavi, I mean, the fact that we're broadcasting this live via YouTube during an FA Cup third round replay between two relatively good Premier League sides says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I disagree with Dan in the sense that I don't think it's losing its magic year on consecutively. I think it sort of lost its magic maybe 10 years ago or so, and it's been the same ever since. It doesn't really help that the third round comes after such a busy period. Now, I know it's always been in January, but with all the games we have now, it's even more busy. And, you've got Liverpool playing, twice in 2 days and in various competitions. So, how do you expect teams to field their best sides? A lot of the big games are not on terrestrial TV anymore. I think that was part of the magic, really. You've got obviously the double Wembley issue with it being at the final and the semi-final. I don't want to make two of these points because they're ones that go around the house with those points and everyone talks about them. They're valid, they're true. Looking a bit more deeply into it, I was looking in 2014-15. The FA Cup didn't even have a sponsor. I mean, if you think in today's world of all that, I know it's the Emirates now, but all this money and they didn't even have a sponsor a few years ago. That's sort of perturbing and worrying, to say the least. And I guess the last thing, at least the Carling Cup is sort of done by February, March. So if you were going to win a trophy, you would maybe ping it on the Carling Cup just to get it over with. It's an attractive way of quickly wrapping things up, gaining a trophy. And we've got the 5:15 kickoff. It's not like how we used to go to each other's houses, Harry, and watch the game from 3 o'clock, but the build-up was from 11. 5. I know it's to suit TV and in various jurisdictions, but I think we look. I think everyone agrees it's lost its magic. I think the disagreement is when it lost its magic and what can be done about it, and the replays as well.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll come on to the replays thing a little bit later on because that is a hotly contested subject at the moment. Should they happen? Should they not? For me, I guess, as an Arsenal fan, I guess, we've won the FA Cup relatively recently on a number of occasions. And at the time, it's great. You go for a day out at Wembley. It's enjoyable. It's fun. All of those things. And particularly when you were in Arsenal's position, who hadn't won a trophy for so long, to then go and win 3 FA Cups in quick succession was great for the supporters. But I guess what I would say is that part of the reason that the FA Cup has probably lost this magic and why it's not a priority anymore is because there is so little financial reward. And we're talking about football in 2020. It's a business now, whether people like that term or not, that's the fact. And it's more beneficial to finish fourth and qualify for a European tournament financially than it is to go all the way and win the FA Cup. Like I said, I know it's a great day for the fans, but from a club owners' perspective, you can surely see why they don't prioritize it, Dan.
Yeah, I can see why it's not prioritised. I totally get that. But I think on one hand, we're very critical of teams who don't win silverware, go for long periods without silverware. Tottenham at the minute, Arsenal in the past. Yet at the same time, we've still got the clubs, the actual clubs themselves, choosing not to take the FA Cup as serious as they could. So in terms of the magic being lost, there's a lot of reasons suggested as to how we can save it and what we can change. But actually, the magic has been lost because things have been changed to begin with. There are some changes that are good changes in other tournaments that has made the FA Cup less glamorous. I get all of that, but if you look at the positives of the FA Cup, the things you used to look forward to as a kid, it was the whole day of watching the FA Cup, the players in suits, some third-rate band releasing a rubbish song like 3 weeks before, the road to Wembley, and now you're at the Wembley in the semi-finals. But yeah. I think for me there is the growth of the Premier League, and then subsequently the necessity to play in the Champions League, which didn't start at the beginning of the Champions League's inception. It was only like a very late 90s that actually getting the Champions League stopped being a nice to have and become an absolute essential. But for me, there's a key time, and when the FA Cup started to lose its magic, you think what the FA Cup was. It was anyone can beat anyone on their given day, and if you're a half decent team, you have a chance of winning the FA Cup. And when the original Big Four was formed, like late 90s, early 2000s, there was 13 or 14 seasons in a row where the FA Cup was won by Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, and once by Liverpool at that time. So
we have had Portsmouth and Wigan in between that, and then maybe before our generation, I think we had Wimbledon and Coventry won it.
Coventry won it in '87. Wimbledon won it in '88.
Yeah, and then Ipswich. I could go
all the way up, but
that's all I know.
Everton won it in '95, and then from
they beat Man United, didn't they? Yeah,
they did. So from '96 to 2010, there was only one outside the top four, which was Portsmouth, and then the next team to win it after that was Manchester City, who had bought their way into the top four. So what happened in that period of time is you have taken away the glamour that any team can now win this, and suddenly you've got lesser sides fighting to stay up with the finances of the Premier League as well, and the cost of going down, and actually playing your best team in the FA Cup when the magic is gone, or the chance of sneaking your way through to the later stages has gone. There's a sensible case for these lesser clubs doing that. So that is the period of time where the FA Cup started to lose its magic. The final started to become more boring. It coincides as well, which is unfortunate, with the old Wembley being knocked down. And I think it's just a perfect storm of events now that have made the FA Cup far less of an attraction to anyone in the game.
We do all get into it a bit, though.
And the nostalgic people.
When it comes to the semis and the final, we do
it's less attractive to the players. It's less attractive to the fans, apart from the lower league clubs. It's just not. It's not got the draw they ever had for a multitude of reasons that all come to a head at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple of comments coming through. A big shout out to those guys who are tuned in with us live at the moment. And of course, to those who listen back later on, a big hello to Graham. He says he didn't know that Manchester United once opted out of the FA Cup because of their run in the league. That's not quite accurate, Graham. It was because of the Club World Cup.
The World Club Cup, wasn't it? Yeah.
And that's the reason they pulled out of that. Big shout out to Craig Scott of the Same Old Arsenal. If you don't subscribe there already, please go over there and do so. It's a fantastic podcast, the best Arsenal podcast out there. He says it all started when United pulled out to play in the World Club Cup. And a lot of people have that opinion that was kind of the first time somebody devalued the competition. Somebody almost made the point that actually this cup competition is not as important as we all believe.
Yeah.
And, you know,
but I disagree with that. I know Craig comes on the show quite a lot, and he comments quite a bit when we do these debates, or when I've been on the Chronicles before. She's a regular listener. Hello, Craig. I agree. It's a significant event, but at the time that was a one-off occasion, similar to Liverpool throwing the Carling Cup game the other day, where realistically, Manchester United weren't given a choice by the English Football Association. I don't believe then the very next season the FA Cup was devalued, or the season after that, or the season after that. I think it's one event that gets attributed to being the downfall, if that makes sense. I think on its own, it was just an isolated one-off incident, and the next year Manchester United were back taking the cup seriously. And I think at the time some people were disappointed, but I don't think that was the demise. Personally, I think it was just. Do you know? I think it was Graham who made the first comment. They didn't actually pull out of the cup from the beginning, which I think made it a little bit worse. They won their third round game.
Yeah.
So perhaps in hindsight, Man United could have played a weakened team in the. He didn't really have as many weakened teams in them days. The squads were a lot smaller. But I don't think that was the start of it. I think the start of it come a little bit later, where the finals moved to the Millennium at the same time, and you had Arsenal and Chelsea sharing it about 7 times in a row, and it become a closed shop, a bit like the league. So the thing that made the FA Cup special was it wasn't really a closed shop for the elite, and that was taken away.
But you agree with finals? Sorry, not finals. You agree with replays, don't you, Dan? That's the bit I don't get.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I think the fact that a small club can rely on a replay just shows the sort of disparity in money. It's just like archaic that they have to rely on that.
That was part of the glamour, though, wasn't it? Like you would see teams be so happy because they got a replay, and what that could mean to, for example, a lower league club who are struggling financially. What getting a replay at Old Trafford, for example, would mean to those clubs. For me, that added to it. But I mean, we've spoken a lot about how the Magic's gone. There are a number of factors. We've touched on those. If you were in charge of the FA and you were tasked with trying to restore the glamour of this competition, Alavi, how would you go about it?
So, all right, I do. Following on from the previous point, really quickly, I would get rid of replays. I know that you think that's. I think part of the magic has been us because it's. I honestly see it as a weekend off. There's too many games, and actually. And this was a quote. I can't believe I'm going to quote Glenn Roeder, but here we go. He made a really good. Honestly, he made a really good point. I remember it years ago, and he said that if you're going up against a bigger team, and you should go straight from 90 minutes, and if it's still a draw, right, then you should actually just want to go to penalties, and you should fancy your chances because penalties you've got more chance of winning, going to the next round, and getting more money. Because penalties is essentially you take 5 or we take 5, rather than a 90-minute game of skill, which you're likely to lose. Which I think is quite a good point. You'll actually make more money than you will if you go to get a replay at Anfield, because you're advancing to the next round, and you could get a big side there.
Yeah,
go on, Dan.
But I just think like we're saying the magic has gone, and the reason the magic has gone is because so many things that have been changed. So the neutral, I went to quite a lot. Lost them all probably. Went to quite a lot of neutral semi-finals and neutral grounds. They've taken that away, you know. And the only thing left of them, I mean, even Chaz and Dave has died. Like what is there left for me? So all I've really got left is, you know, what right have we got to take away the last bit that makes the FA Cup special for somebody? You know, we don't enjoy it. Not many people enjoy it as much as we used to, but you've got little clubs all around the country with that opportunity to bring a big team back to their terrible ground, or you know, an opportunity to go to places like Anfield because they've managed to draw in a farm somewhere. Like, why, with everything that we've done to the FA Cup, I say we, but football's done, why should we then take that away? So you mentioned
that big club doesn't even play their best players. I remember going to Barnet and they got Drew Man United, and I was thinking, I'll see some. Actually, the one player that was playing was PK because he was so young back there. But you know, they're not even
you asked me what the FA Cup could do. Harry asked you what the FA. If I was in charge of FA, what could I do? You know, you can make a team play a number of players who was in the matchday squad from the last league game. You can do that. You can make.
How did you
never be able to
that as a rule.
You'll never. Dan, you're on another planet.
Of course you can. Of course you can.
Let's-
Wolves
let's-
got fined. Wolves got fined for arresting players, didn't they? But you mentioned penalties. So they've done that in the Carling Cup. In the Carling Cup, they go straight to penalties. Has it improved the Carling Cup?
This is like when we're talking about VAR and you're talking about magnets on players' boots. Like you're going
hold
like
on a
5
minute, guys.
places.
Hold on a minute, guys. Let's go over to some of the listener comments who are watching us live at the moment. Neil Thompson says, "Get rid of the League Cup, and the winner of the FA Cup, you get a Champions League or Europa place."
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion, that you offer a Champions League place to the winner, or even a Europa place. And
I like that. I like that.
And I think the thing is, Harry, a lot of clubs that have a realistic chance of winning the FA Cup will also have a decent chance of qualifying for the Europa. And, if you get to a certain part of the season, you might think to yourself, hold on a minute, rather than trying to finish fourth, let's try and win the FA Cup, because I could get into a Champions League. I mean, the winter break doesn't help either.
So you do get a Europa place if you win the FA Cup. That happens.
Yeah, but I would give a Champions League place.
Sorry, give a Champions League place. Because the Europa, don't even get me started on the... Do you know the other one I was thinking before we go to questions, right? Dan, what can Spurs' ground hold? 62, 63?
Yeah, 661 and a bit.
Yeah, okay. I was offered a ticket for last night for 20 quid.
Yeah.
And I wanted all the stadiums, right? And I haven't been to Spurs. I went to Swatname, but not the new one. And I didn't go purely based on the fact it was the FA Cup.
It's a shit game.
And it was cold. But mainly because it was the FA Cup. Is that because
it was the FA Cup or because it was Middlesbrough?
No, because it was the FA Cup. And
because he's not allowed out on weeknights.
That as well. Yeah. But the thing is, I saw the attendance was something like 48,000, maybe 49,000. That leaves 13,000 tickets. You could reach out to schools, you could reach out to charities, you could give the tickets away. Man United Wolves, which is going on right now, back to Harry's point right at the start, you've got travelling fans being charged 55 quid, right? Now, there's a cap on league games, Premier League games on away fans or something like 30 quid. And Wolves fans are being charged 55 quid. So just little things like that.
That's the club more so. I mean, the FA can implement those rules, but
the FA can
So there was 43,000.
I'm allowed out on a Thursday as well, by the way. So
at Tottenham, and I'll be honest, I didn't go last night because I didn't. I don't need to explain myself to the likes of you, but I didn't go last night because I didn't want to. But it's still 13,000 more than the previous stadium used to hold, so it's still a lot of fans. Like the FA could retain an allocation of replays if they want. So they could say we're going to have replays, and we're going to keep 20% of tickets to local schools. There's no reason why they can't do that to keep attendances up. But we're talking about scrapping replays. I would accept an argument that says if two Premier League clubs draw each other, then there's not going to be a replay. I accept that as an argument. But if a lower league club is playing, I don't think we should be taking that away from them. We're looking at, Bury have just gone bankrupt because they haven't got enough money. And I think if you're playing a lower league club and you're whinging because you've had a replay, well, you should have won. It's as simple as that. You should have won. Or if you don't want to win, then at least have a common decency of like attacking the last 20 minutes and trying to lose. But to say to that little club, like Wolves, Nuno Espirito Santo was moaning and saying, well, a replay's terrible for us. Well, I didn't see him going gung-ho in the last 20 minutes, trying to risk reward. Let's try and win this. But if we get caught, so it's no good.
But Dan, he's just repeating what fans are saying. I've had so many fans say that. Do you know what? The worst thing I want is a replay. Honestly, they'd rather lose than have a replay.
Yeah, but then I'd say they're not fans, because I would never rather lose. I didn't want to rather lose to Middlesbrough last week and go out of the FA Cup and then listen to a load of other fans saying.
Agreed.
So you have to. Replays have been scrapped in the quarterfinal. They've been scrapped in the fifth round. All we're saying is, for 2 rounds, while the lower league clubs are still in with a chance of making a name for themselves, why can't we just leave that as it is? What value do we really get?
So it gives smaller clubs like Arsenal a chance to win a trophy as well.
Funny, you're on an Arsenal channel, mate. Remember that. Watch your mouth.
So has the fifth round improved because there's no replays? I would say certainly not. The issue is the fixture congestion around Christmas. The League Cup has still got 2 legs. Some of the teams are still in that. Well, do you know what? That is not.
We don't have a winter break.
Why
just extend the season?
Why is it that in England we have 2 domestic cup competitions? You don't have that in most other countries, and therefore, when you only have one, I guess there's some added importance to that one. It becomes more valuable. Craig makes a great point in the chat at Alavi. Arsenal a chance. We've won it the most.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Making you look like an idiot as usual, Alavi.
It gives you a chance to win the most amount.
There you go. But for me, I'm not really dead against the replays thing. As I said earlier on, for me, it's a chance for some of the lower league clubs to keep going, to survive. It's massive. And the FA Cup is supposed to be about inclusion. It's supposed to be about giving opportunities to lower league teams and unfancied players to make themselves heroes and make a day of it. And for me, that's part of the charm of this competition. So I'm not, in the corner of those who are saying that the replay should be scrapped, full stop. What I would say, though, is that the Champions League place for me is the key. That is the key thing that I would look to implement, because I think what that does is it makes the likes of Arsenal, of Manchester United, of Liverpool, of Chelsea, of Manchester City stand up and think twice about resting players in this competition. We've seen how competitive the Premier League has become, particularly in the top positions. We're looking at Leicester now, which means one of the traditional big four or big six even are going to miss out. Two are even going to miss out.
So then, Harry, do only 1 to 3 in the Prem get Champions League?
Yeah, one to three in the Champions League, and the 4th place goes to the FA Cup. Now,
and the Europa? How about the Europa winner?
The Europa can stay as it is. The Europa is not a glamorous competition.
No. I'm saying, but the Europa still, they get a Champions League spot, don't they? So
how do you feel though with Arsenal? I mean, Arsenal used to be able to finish 1st and 2nd. Now, realistically, the highest Arsenal are going to finish is 4th at the moment until something changes. How do you feel after a long, hard season, and your place is given to? And I don't want to contradict the previous point. Typically, only the big clubs win it. But how do you feel if that's then won by Chelsea, who have finished 7th that year because they had a rough year, and you've got to give your place in the Champions League up? I mean, does that sit right?
That's the same as promotion, though, isn't it? That's the same as like championship promotion, and they go into the playoffs, and the team that finished 3rd, who got 20 more points than the team that finished 6th, end up not getting promoted, and the team that finished 6th got
yes
the league.
Yes and no, because when the Premier League began, there was only 2 teams who come up and 2 teams went down. So that the whole playoff bit, I think, was to give an extra place and open it up. I get what you're saying. At least it's the same competition. It's been around for a long time. But, similarly, if they brought in a playoff for 4th place in the Champions League, which was brought around for years, which was muted for years, about 10 years ago, let's do a playoff. Like, that wouldn't sit right as well if you've come out through 38 games. 38 games is a long time. To give up a place in a competition to a team who only have to play 6 or win a 2, win. You look at the Super Cup that fast that has just happened in Saudi Arabia, the Spanish Super Cup, where they sent 4 teams over there to have a kick about for a few days. Like, the playoff, a Champions League playoff would be ridiculous. I know we've digressed a little bit, but I don't think Champions League is the solution.
There is no other solution.
What you're referring to in Spain was a money spinning exercise. That's purely what it is. So in terms of the FA Cup, which is obviously what we're discussing this evening, we need to find a way of making that competition appeal to everybody, not just those who are mid-table and below, not just the lower league clubs. It needs to appeal to everyone. There needs to be something on the table that makes the likes of Manchester City, the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, all the big clubs. I'm not going to say Spurs because big clubs win things, but all of those clubs, there needs to be something that makes them take the competition seriously. And at the moment, we're not getting that. Now, guys, we've run over time already, so I'm just going to get a quick 30-second roundup from each of you. Dan DeLuca, head of the FA tomorrow. Quick turnaround, quick solution. What you can only put one idea on the table. What is your one go-to idea that you think will save and restore the FA Cup to its former glories?
At the beginning of the season, I would make the clubs name a 25-man squad, the same way they have to for the Premier League and the Champions League. And you're a brave manager who stands up in September and says to the fans, I don't give a shit about this competition. It's easy to do in January when, results have been looked at for half a year. But in September, you've got to stand in front of your fans and say, we've been in the cup off before we've even started. You're a big, brave boy. That's what I would do.
I like that. Alavi, yours.
Champions League place goes 1 to 3 in the Premier League. and the fourth Champions League place goes to either the winner of the FA Cup or a possible playoff between the winner of the FA Cup and the Coca-Cola Cup, or whatever it's now called.
Okay, interesting stuff, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all the usual stuff. And if you're listening via the audio platform, please do leave us a review. This show is brought to you by tvsportsblog.com, and we'll be back next week with another general football debate. Until then, take care.